My mom got pregnant with my dad's brother's baby, so my dad walked away quietly. Years later I learned why he let them all go broke. I was 7 years old the night my father took my hand and walked away from everything. People always ask me if I remember it clearly. Yeah, I do. Every detail. The kind of memory that burns itself into your brain because you know, even as a kid, that nothing will ever be the same. It was late, past my bedtime. I was supposed to be asleep, but I could hear my parents arguing downstairs. Not yelling. Worse. The kind of low, tense voices that make your stomach hurt even when you can't make out the words. Then I heard other voices. My grandparents. They'd come over, which was weird for that time of night. I crept to the top of the stairs and sat there in my pajamas, listening. My mother was crying. Not the sad kind of crying, the defensive kind. My father wasn't saying much. My grandfather kept using that voice he had, the one that made it sound like whatever he was saying was just obvious common sense. Alaric, you need to think about the family. Blood forgives blood. This is what we do. Celestia made a mistake, but she's still your wife. Still family. I didn't understand what they were talking about. Something about a baby. Something about my uncle Ronan, my dad's younger brother. Then I heard my father speak. His voice was different than I'd ever heard it. Not angry. Just flat. Get out of my house. More talking. More pleading. My grandmother's voice now, softer, trying a different angle. Think of Lyra. She needs stability. She needs her family together. That's when I heard footsteps on the stairs. I scrambled back to my room, dove under the covers. But the door opened anyway. The hallway light spilled in, and I saw my father's silhouette. Lyra, I know you're awake. I sat up. He looked tired. Not angry, just done. Pack your favorite things, he said quietly. We're leaving. Leaving where? Away from here. Just you and me. Whatever fits in your backpack, okay? I didn't ask questions. Something about the way he said it made me understand this was serious. I grabbed my backpack and started stuffing things in. My favorite books. The stuffed rabbit my dad had won me at the fair. Some clothes. Downstairs, I could hear my mother's voice rising. You can't just take her. Alaric. You can't. My father took my hand. We walked down the stairs together. Everyone was in the living room. My mother, my grandparents, and Uncle Ronan standing there looking uncomfortable. My mother tried to come toward us, but my father's look stopped her. Say goodbye to your mother, Lyra, he said. I mumbled something. I don't even remember what. I was confused. Scared. We walked out the front door. Nobody followed us. My father's truck was in the driveway. He lifted me into the passenger seat, threw our bags in the back, and got in. As we pulled away, I turned around and watched the house through the rear window. The lights were all on. I could see shadows moving behind the curtains. Nobody came outside. Nobody chased us. We drove for what felt like forever. I fell asleep somewhere on the highway and woke up in a small town I'd never seen before. The sign said we were 2 hours from home, but it felt like we'd driven to another planet. My father found us a cheap motel that first night. The next week, he found a small apartment. The week after that, he started working as a crane operator at a construction site. I started at a new school. Kids asked about my mom. I didn't know what to tell them, so I said she was sick. It felt easier than the truth, whatever the truth actually was. My father worked brutal hours. 14, sometimes 16-hour days. But he was always home for dinner. Always helped me with homework. Never complained. He never said a bad word about my mother, my grandparents, or Uncle Ronan. When I asked why we left, he just said, sometimes people make choices. And we have to make ours. The only rule he ever gave me was this: never beg people who already chose to lose you. I didn't understand it then. I was 7. But I remembered it. Years passed. We built a life. My father's work ethic was insane. He moved from crane operator to supervisor, then started taking side jobs, then opened his own small construction company. We moved into a real house. I stopped asking about my mother. I assumed we'd never hear from them again. I was 16 when I got curious and looked them up on social media. And that's when the friend request came through. I didn't recognize the profile at first. Then I opened it. The picture showed my mother, Uncle Ronan, and a kid who looked about 9 years old, my half-brother, I realized, standing in front of a huge house. My grandparents' house, but bigger. Renovated. Expensive looking. Everyone was smiling. Designer clothes. Professional photo. The caption underneath read, "Family is everything." I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I accepted the request. Accepting that friend request was probably stupid, but I was 16 and curious. I didn't message them or anything. I just looked. Scrolled through years of photos I'd missed. Birthday parties with bouncy castles and catering. Vacations to places I had to Google. My half-brother Corbin in private school uniforms, holding trophies. Uncle Ronan standing next to luxury cars, his dealership, apparently. My mother in designer everything. The house kept appearing in the background of photos, getting nicer each year. New siding. Landscaping. A pool. Meanwhile, my dad and I were living in a decent but modest house on the edge of town. I wore thrift store clothes and didn't care. We were fine. But looking at those photos made me feel something. Not jealousy exactly. More like confusion. These people had destroyed our family. And they looked happy. Successful. Like nothing bad had ever happened. I didn't tell my dad I'd looked them up. I knew he wouldn't approve, not because he'd be angry, but because he wouldn't see the point. By then, I was working summers at his construction company. He'd started it 5 years earlier, just him and 2 guys. Now he had an actual office, a dozen employees, and constant work. I did filing at first. Then receptionist stuff. Then he started teaching me how to read blueprints, how to estimate jobs, how to talk to clients. "You don't have to work here," he'd say. "You could do anything." "I like it here," I'd tell him. And I did. One afternoon, I was organizing his office and found a file cabinet I'd never opened. Legal documents. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Divorce papers. Final decree dated 9 years ago, just months after we left. Then other documents, a formal severance from his parents' estate. Legal termination of any inheritance rights. Business incorporation papers showing his company was solely in his name. Property deeds. Investment accounts. Everything was separate. Clean. Like he'd surgically removed himself from that entire family. I closed the cabinet and sat there thinking. Find something interesting? I jumped. My dad was standing in the doorway with coffee. I wasn't snooping, I was just, "It's fine." He sat down at his desk. "What do you want to know? Why don't we ever hear from them? Like, at all? They made their choice. I made mine. But don't you ever?" I struggled for the words. "I don't know. Wonder about them? Hate them?" He took a sip of coffee, thinking. "Hate requires energy, Lyra. I'm using mine to build something better." "They look like they're doing fine," I said before I could stop myself. He raised an eyebrow. "You looked them up?" I was curious. "And what did you see?" "Big house. Nice cars. Expensive stuff. Uncle Ronan has that dealership. They look successful." My dad smiled, but not in a mean way. More like someone watching a kid figure out a magic trick. "They're spending money they don't have, Lyra." "How do you know?" "Because people who have real wealth don't need to prove it." I thought about that. About the constant vacation photos, the designer labels always visible in pictures, the captions about blessed and living our best life. You think they're faking it? I think they're mortgaged to their eyeballs. I think Ronan's business barely breaks even and your grandparents are covering the difference. I think your mother married him because she thought family money meant something. But you don't actually know that. "No," he admitted. "And I don't need to. Their finances aren't my problem anymore." He went back to his paperwork. Subject closed. But I couldn't let it go completely. Over the next few months, I checked their social media occasionally. Same pattern. Constant posts about abundance and family and gratitude. Never any mention of my dad or me, obviously. We'd been edited out of their story. I told myself I didn't care. That I was just watching from a distance, like some anthropologist studying a foreign culture. Then, one Thursday evening, I was at my dad's office doing inventory when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. "Hello?" There was a pause. Then a woman's voice, shaky and older than I remembered. "Lyra? Sweetheart, is that you?" "My grandmother. We've been trying to reach you," she continued, her voice doing that thing where it tried to sound warm but couldn't hide the desperation underneath. "We need to talk about your father." I stood there in my dad's office, phone pressed to my ear, not saying anything. "Lyra? Are you there, honey?" Honey. Like we talked every week. Like she hadn't ignored my existence for 9 years. "What do you want?" I kept my voice flat. We just wanted to reconnect. It's been so long, and we miss you so much. We miss both of you. What do you want? I repeated. She hesitated. I could hear her recalibrating. Well, we were hoping. We thought maybe it was time for the family to reconcile. Your grandfather and I aren't getting any younger, and life is too short for. What do you want from my father? Silence. Is he doing well? She asked, and there it was. The real question. We heard he has a business now. Construction, right? That must be going well. Goodbye. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from anger. The audacity of calling after all these years, pretending it was about family, when really they just wanted to know if my dad had money now. When my dad came back from his site visit an hour later, I told him about the call. He didn't look surprised. He just nodded and said, "They'll call again. When they do, you decide if you want to answer." That's it? That's all you're going to say? What else is there to say? They're running out of options. How do you know? He didn't answer. Just gave me that look that meant he knew more than he was saying. So I started digging. It wasn't hard. Public records are public for a reason. I spent that weekend going through court filings, business registrations, property records. Uncle Ronan's luxury car dealership, 3 active lawsuits. 2 for fraud, 1 for breach of contract. Sales numbers declining year over year based on the business filings. My grandparents' property, a second mortgage filed 2 years ago. Amount, $400,000. I showed my dad what I'd found. He glanced at the papers and handed them back. Like I said, they're spending money they don't have. The calls kept coming. Next was my grandfather. Tried the authority approach. Lyra, it's time you and your father stopped this childish grudge. Family doesn't abandon family. I hung up on him too. Then my mother. That one was harder. Lyra, please. I know I made mistakes. I know I hurt you and your father. But Corbin asks about you sometimes. He'd like to meet his sister. Using my half-brother as bait. Classy. He has a mother, I said. He doesn't need me. Please, just. Is your father doing okay? We heard his company is successful. We're so proud of him. Proud. That word made me want to throw my phone across the room. Stop calling. Each time I hung up, I wanted to scream. I wanted to call them back and tell them exactly what I thought. That they were transparent. That I could see right through their concern to the desperation underneath. But my dad stopped me. You don't need to fight people who are already losing, he said one evening after I'd ranted for 20 minutes about my mother's call. How are they losing? Their social media looks perfect. Big house, nice cars, private schools. Looking rich and being rich are very different things. So you knew this would happen? You knew they'd fall apart? He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. When I left, I knew they'd overspend. Ronan was always bad with money, always needing bailouts from our parents. Your mother loved appearances more than substance. And my parents. They enabled all of it. They thought family loyalty meant endless support, no matter how badly someone screwed up. So you just waited? I didn't wait for anything. I moved on. I built something separate. What they did or didn't do was their choice. But you knew they'd collapse. I knew they'd eventually cannibalize each other. People who live beyond their means always do. I sat with that for a while. They're going to keep calling, aren't they? Probably. Until they find what they're really looking for. Which is money. He was right. 2 weeks later, a certified letter arrived at his office. I signed for it. Opened it before he got there. It was from a lawyer. The letter claimed my dad owed his parents $200,000 for unpaid family debts and financial support obligations. It threatened litigation if the amount wasn't paid within 30 days. Attached was a breakdown, money they claimed they'd loaned him over the years before we left. Money for our wedding. Money for the down payment on the house we'd abandoned. Money for family emergencies they'd supposedly covered on his behalf. All of it BS. All of it made up. But it was official. Legal letterhead. Threats of court. When my dad walked in and saw me holding the letter, his expression didn't change. He read it once. Then set it on his desk. Call our lawyer, he said calmly. Tell him to handle this. That's it? You're not even mad? Mad about what? They're desperate. This is what desperate people do. He picked up the letter again, looked at it one more time, then dropped it in his outbox like it was junk mail. But I saw something in his eyes. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just certainty. Like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. The lawyer handled the lawsuit threat with one phone call. They have no legal standing, he told my dad. Every claim is either fabricated or past the statute of limitations. I'll send a formal dismissal, but honestly, this isn't even worth responding to. My dad thanked him and hung up. That was it. No follow-up. No checking in. He didn't even mention it again. I was 18 by then, working full-time at the company. I deferred college for a year to learn the business, and honestly, I was good at it. My dad had expanded to 3 cities, 40+ employees, and I was handling project management for the smaller builds. We were busy. Really busy. Which is maybe why it took me a while to notice when things started falling apart on their end. The first sign was Uncle Ronan's dealership. I saw it on a local news site, bankruptcy filing. The article mentioned financial irregularities and outstanding debts to multiple creditors. His fancy showroom was being liquidated. I showed my dad at lunch. He glanced at it. That was it. Just Then he went back to reviewing a contract. Dad, did you see this? Ronan's business is going under. I saw it. And nothing. It's not our problem. Over the next few months, I watched the rest unfold like a slow-motion car crash. My grandparents' house, the one that looked so perfect in all those photos, got listed for sale. Then the listing changed to foreclosure auction. The winning bid was less than half what they'd probably put into those renovations. My mother's social media changed too. The designer bag posts stopped. The vacation photos disappeared. Instead, vague inspirational quotes about resilience and tough seasons and what doesn't destroy you. Corbin switched schools. I could tell because the uniform in his photos changed from private academy to regular public school. I kept waiting to feel something. Vindication, maybe. Satisfaction. Instead, I just felt weird. Like I was watching strangers. My dad noticed me scrolling through their updates one evening. You expected this to feel different, he said. I thought I'd feel vindicated or something. Vindication requires caring what they think. I stopped caring 18 years ago. And the thing was, I could tell he meant it. He wasn't tracking their collapse. Wasn't checking social media or reading news articles. I was the one doing that. He was focused on a new commercial project, planning my college expenses, talking to his accountant about expansion opportunities. The family that betrayed him literally didn't occupy his thoughts. That's when I realized, this wasn't revenge. Revenge requires attention. He'd just moved on. Completely. But they hadn't moved on from him. The messages started coming to me. First from my mother, long, rambling texts about how she'd made mistakes and wished things were different and hoped we could talk. I didn't respond. Then calls to my dad's office. His receptionist started keeping a log because they were so frequent. My grandmother. My grandfather. Uncle Ronan. Sometimes twice a day. None of the calls were returned. A handwritten letter arrived at our house. My dad saw the return address and threw it away unopened. Don't you want to know what it says? I asked. No. But what if it's Lyra? What could possibly be in that letter that would matter to me? I didn't have an answer. They made their choices, he continued. I made mine. Nothing they say now changes that. He wasn't angry. Wasn't bitter. Just done. That should have been the end of it. But then came the night they showed up in person. It was late, almost 8. My dad and I were closing up the office after a long day. I was carrying project files to the truck when I looked up and saw them. 4 figures standing in the parking lot under the streetlights. My grandparents, both looking smaller than I remembered. My mother, arms crossed against the cold. Uncle Ronan, hands shoved in his pockets. They'd been waiting for us. Dad, I said quietly. He looked up from locking the office door, saw them, and paused. For just a moment, he stood there. I couldn't read his expression. Then he continued locking the door, checked it twice like he always did, and started walking toward the truck. Like they weren't even there. My grandmother stepped forward first. Alaric, please. Just 5 minutes. That's all we're asking. My dad kept walking toward the truck. I followed, my heart hammering. They moved to block our path. My grandfather stood directly in front of the driver's side door. We're losing the house. You know that, right? We need help. My dad stopped walking. He looked at his father. Not with anger. Not with anything, really. His face was completely blank. He didn't say a word. The bank is taking it next month, my grandmother added, her voice breaking. We'll have nowhere to go. Your father is sick, Alaric. My dad stepped around them and reached for the truck door handle. Uncle Ronan moved fast, getting between him and the truck. Wait. Just wait a second. Ronan's voice was shaking. I know what I did was unforgivable. I know that. But this isn't about me. It's about them. They're going to lose everything. My dad looked at him. Still nothing. Say something. Ronan's voice cracked. Yell at me. Tell me I'm a piece of S-word. Just react. Silence. My mother came forward then, wrapping her coat tighter around herself. Alaric, I'm not asking for me. I know I have no right. But Corbin, he's 12. He's scared. He doesn't understand why we're losing our home. He's your nephew. He's innocent in all this. I watched my dad's face for any flicker of emotion. Nothing. My grandmother was crying now. We're family. Blood. Doesn't that mean anything to you? My dad opened the truck door. My grandfather grabbed it, holding it open. I'm dying. Cancer. 6 months, they said. Maybe less. For a moment, everyone froze. My dad's hand stayed on the door. He looked at his father directly. And then he spoke. One word. No. That was it. Just no. My grandmother's face crumpled. No? That's all you have to say? My dad got in the truck. Answer me. My grandfather's voice went up, desperate now. I'm your father. I'm dying, and you won't even. The truck door closed. Uncle Ronan rushed to the passenger side as I was getting in. You're really going to watch us lose everything? After everything I slammed my door. My mother ran to my dad's window, her face pressed close to the glass. What do you want us to say? Her voice was muffled, but I could hear the desperation. I'm sorry. We're all sorry. Just tell us what you want to hear and we'll say it. My dad put the truck in gear. Please. She was crying now, hands on the hood. Please, Alaric, just help us. We're begging you. My grandfather slammed his palm against the hood. You self-righteous B-word. After we raised you. After everything we gave you. You're going to abandon us? The truck started moving forward, slowly. My mother had to step back. My grandfather too. I turned around in my seat, watching them through the rear window. They stood there in the parking lot under the streetlights, 4 silhouettes getting smaller. My grandmother had her hand over her mouth. Uncle Ronan was pacing, running his hands through his hair. My mother was still crying. My grandfather just stood there, arms at his sides, looking lost. We drove away. I was shaking. My hands were clenched in my lap. Adrenaline was flooding through me. Dad, I started. I know. I know. His voice was calm. Even. Like we just had a normal day at work. Shouldn't we? Shouldn't we at least? No. I looked at him. His expression hadn't changed. He wasn't angry. Wasn't satisfied. Wasn't anything. They're really desperate, I said quietly. Yes. And you're not going to help them at all. No. We drove the rest of the way home in silence. I kept replaying the scene in my head. My grandmother's tears. My grandfather's anger. My mother's pleading. And my dad's single word. No. Not I can't. Not I won't. Not after what you did. Just no. No explanation. No justification. No emotion. When we got home, my dad went inside like it was any other evening. Made himself a sandwich. Turned on the news. Sat in his chair with a beer. I stood in the kitchen doorway, watching him. How are you so calm? He looked up at me, genuinely confused by the question. Why wouldn't I be calm? Because they ambushed us. They're losing everything. Your dad said he's dying. And? Doesn't that affect you at all? He thought about it for a moment. No. How? Because I stopped giving them space in my head 18 years ago. What happens to them isn't my responsibility. He went back to watching the news. I went to my room and lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling. I kept thinking about my grandmother's face. The desperation in my mother's voice. My grandfather's hand slamming on the truck hood. And my father, unmoved. Untouched. Like they were strangers asking him for directions. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I found my dad on the porch with his coffee, reading the newspaper. The sun was just coming up. He looked completely relaxed. Like last night had never happened. I sat down beside him with my own coffee. "They'll try again," he said without looking up from his paper. "And the answer will be the same." He was right. They did try again. Over the next few weeks, I watched from a distance as everything fell apart. The house sold at auction. My grandparents moved into a one-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. The kind of place with thin walls and a parking lot full of old cars. Uncle Ronan got a job as a sales associate at a dealership across the state. Not even a management position. Just regular sales. My mother moved in with some friend I'd never heard of. Corbin's new school was the same public one I'd gone to as a kid, the one where the gym still smelled like old socks and the cafeteria served the same mystery meat every Tuesday. I saw updates occasionally. Not because I was looking for them anymore, but because their social media was still public and sometimes things just appeared. The posts were different now. Quotes about resilience. Vague mentions of new chapters and downsizing by choice. The kind of things people post when they're trying to convince themselves as much as anyone else. No more designer bags. No more vacation photos. No more family is everything captions in front of the big house. One final letter came. I found it in the mailbox on a Tuesday. Handwritten envelope, my grandmother's shaky cursive on the front. I brought it inside, set it on the kitchen counter. My dad came in from the garage, saw it, recognized the handwriting. He glanced at it and kept walking. "Dad, it might be important." "It's not." The letter sat there for 3 days. Every time I walked past it, I thought about opening it. Just to know what it said. But I didn't. On the 4th day, I noticed it was gone. I found it in the trash, still unopened. "You didn't even read it?" He was at the table with his laptop, reviewing bids. "No." What if Lyra, what could possibly be in that letter that would matter to me? I didn't have an answer. "Thinking about them would give them space they haven't earned," he said, not looking up from his screen. "I'm not interested in giving them space." And that's when I really understood. This wasn't some calculated revenge. He wasn't punishing them by withholding help. He wasn't enjoying their suffering. He genuinely didn't care. They'd become irrelevant to him. Complete strangers. People whose problems had nothing to do with his life. I sat down across from him. "Do you ever think about them? Like, at all?" "No. Not even a little?" He looked up at me. "Why would I?" "I don't know. They're your family. We're my family." Past tense. He went back to his laptop. I thought about what he'd built while they'd been collapsing. The company was worth millions now. Completely debt-free. He owned properties across 3 cities. Had a reputation in the industry that meant clients came to him. And he'd raised me. Put me through business courses, taught me everything about construction management. I was running our largest division now at 26. He'd done all of that without their support. Despite them. Or maybe because of them, I wasn't sure. "You taught me something," I said. "What's that?" "That walking away isn't weakness." He nodded. "And that the best revenge is building something they can't touch." He smiled slightly but didn't respond. A few months later, I got a message on social media. From Corbin. "Hi. I don't really know you. My mom says you're my half-sister. I just wanted to say hi." I showed my dad. "What should I do?" "Your choice. He's not responsible for their mistakes." "Would you be okay if I responded? Would I try to stop you?" "No." "Then you have your answer." I wrote back. Kept it brief, not warm but not cold either. Told him I was open to talking when he was older, but that I had no relationship with his parents. He seemed to understand. 2 years later, I'm sitting on the porch of the house my dad built with my own coffee, watching the sun come up. I run the commercial division now. 40 employees under me. My dad's talking about retirement, though I don't think he'll actually do it. People ask me sometimes if he's bitter about what happened. I tell them no. That he moved on so completely they became irrelevant. Most people don't believe it. They think he must be hiding anger somewhere, that it'll surface eventually. But I've watched him for 20 years now. I've seen how he operates. He gave them nothing. Not his anger, not his time, not his money, not even his thoughts. Just one word, spoken once in a parking lot. No. And then silence. The kind of silence that lasts forever. I think about my grandmother's question sometimes. The one she asked in the parking lot that night. "Doesn't family mean anything to you?" The answer, I realize now, is yes. Family meant everything to my dad. That's why when they betrayed it, he walked away completely. Because if family actually matters, you don't half-ass your response when it's destroyed. You don't stay for appearances or obligation or guilt. You either have family that respects you, or you build something better without them. My dad chose to build, and what he built was an empire they couldn't touch, a life they couldn't claim, and a daughter who understood her worth. They spent 18 years thinking he ran away. He spent 18 years running towards something better. That's the difference. My phone buzzes. A client asking about a project timeline. I respond while finishing my coffee. My dad comes out onto the porch, his own mug in hand. He sits in the chair next to mine. We don't say anything. We don't need to. The sun rises. Another day starts. And somewhere across town, they're living with the consequences of choices they made 2 decades ago. But that's their story. This one's ours. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you really like our videos, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.